Growing up in Christianity, I was taught a lot of bad messages, bad life decisions. But one of the few things that I learned really well in Christianity is number 8. Not taking a nuclear heterosexual family as the only viable, valid way of living. Now, Christianity didn't teach me to value anything but what they valued. So if they did not value gay marriage, then they didn't teach me to value gay marriage. Of course, when I grew up, there was no such thing as gay marriage because Obergefell hadn't quite passed yet. And I learned the hypocrisy of marriage based on how other people viewed it. And, I mean, marriage can be a beautiful thing. Marriage can do a lot of things for people. I do believe that viewing marriage as a default setting or something that's expected is morally wrong. We need to view people's choices as valid, regardless if they're single, married, divorced. As long as somebody is alive, everyone deserves to make their own choices. And marriage and everything heterosexual was so glorified in religion that there was very little else that was ever discussed. And I know that some people will disagree with me here, especially if you lived in a liberal church. Well, I've only attended one liberal service in my life, and that was when I was visiting my brother, who's 15 years older than me, who ironically is the only one in my family that's even acknowledged I've come out as an atheist. We went to his church, and it was extremely liberal. I guess the denomination, and I'm not even sure if it is a denomination, I think it's just a very liberal group. It's called the Vineyard. If you've never heard of it, you're probably not alone. I had never heard of it prior to the whole we visit scenario. So, but it was very interesting. And there was a lot more freedom and just access to whatever you wanted to have access to. There was very little shame there. Of course, I was only there for a few hours, so who really knows, right? It's just, I don't know. It's just hard to imagine that one church can be so different. And I'm glad for people who've had the experience where they can be who they are. I got turned off the whole marriage relationship thing growing up in Southern Baptist and Calvinism, because really they view getting married as the most important decision you'll ever make. And I think most of it is just utter hypocrisy. And I'm sure, being married, there's nothing wrong with being married. But people view it as a status symbol. They view it like they're winning an award. And I think there's a problem when you view a simple decision as having earth-shattering choices and earth-shattering consequences. And if you don't have status and value while you're single, you're not going to have the right status or value once you finally get married. Because if you view marriage like you view anything that's negative, or they view it as positive, but it doesn't really make much difference. At the end of the day, you're only as valued as you make yourself valued. If you believe that you deserve better, you're not going to settle for less. At least you shouldn't, even though I know lots of people, especially women I've known, who do. You don't settle for less. You hold a standard. You want better. And without meaning to, religion taught me to beware heterosexual agenda. And if you're heterosexual and want to be married, fine. There is nothing wrong with that. We need to stop worshiping it. We need to stop making it the default setting for all women. Because until women want equal in relationships, to be equal, to have equality, their marriage will never be what it could be. And there is no equality in marriage, okay? Marriage is kind of like slavery. There was never equality for everybody, because marriage is set up where women do the majority of work and men profit and get privilege. Even with a modern relationship, women always get the short end of the stick, no matter how you dress it up. And it's sad, but it's just the reality of life. And I can be straight, heterosexual, cis. I can be a woman without kids and be perfectly happy, even though I was never told that as a child. So I reject the nuclear family, the sanctity of marriage. Marriage is only as good as the weakest link. And when over half of marriages fail, maybe we should start looking for a better solution. And I vowed when I was old enough to know what I wanted, which was around 10, that I would never get divorced, because I just don't want to go through that. And the best way never to get divorced is never get married. And that's just the way I am. I don't want to lose who I am by being in relationships. And relationships always take some toll on women. Doesn't matter how healthy it is, even though it does matter. At the end of the day, women always get the short end of the stick every single time. And marriage is kind of like a game where they fixed the chances that is so small that doesn't exist. Because the happiest you'll ever be is being a full single person. And until people are comfortable and celebrate being single and held as high in esteem as being married is, people will never understand the gift of just being by themselves. And it's an art that very few people, especially women, have mastered. If you're not comfortable being alone, fulfilled, and showing yourself the validation you need, you'll never arrive. You'll never reach the peak of what you could be. So no, I don't need a guy to be happy. I don't need kids to make me more of a woman. I don't need pets to make me forget that I'm still single. And I'm not saying that's why people have pets. I'm saying that's the stereotype. And I've met a lot of women. They had cats and they loved it. They rocked it. But just because somebody isn't married doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. I think the person who thinks there's something wrong with them is the problem. Our society just needs to make the default as, are you single? I mean, we should be surprised when people, aren't single, because that's the way we came into the world, and that's how we spent half of our life. And we need to stop assuming that everyone is straight or dating. Because then, when someone isn't, it gets real awkward really fast. And being an Uber driver, oh man, I would get some interesting conversations from women who are allergic to being alone. They don't know what to do with themselves. Those are the kind of people I avoid. Because if you're not comfortable being alone, you're not comfortable being in your own skin, and we got a problem. And I've been in therapy for almost 3 years to learn why I like to be alone and what are the perks of just being by myself. And people always assume because I'm alone that I'm lonely. The most lonely people I have ever met consistently in my life were cis, heterosexual women who were married in church. I could tell some horror stories about the stuff they had to deal with. The most lonely people in the world are people who should be happy because they've reached the pinnacle of being heterosexual, but they're not. The most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself or with your pets. Men, women, your partner will never live up to the hype of what you expect them to. Because they're not supposed to. They're not supposed to be your everything. And expecting one person to fulfill everything is stupid. Unless they're a cat. And I've heard a lot of people that are happy just having a cat. But there's just something wrong with our culture. We're not happy being alone. And that's why introverts and single people are the scapegoats of religion. And religious people can say they love singlehood all they want. But you watch how they interact with single people. There's a reason why in 7 churches, not one of them had a class or an event for anybody over the age of 22, under the age of 30, who wasn't married, dating, or in college. Because it doesn't exist in the 3 denominations I was in. They don't know what to do with you if you're not married by 25. They just don't know what to do with you. And nobody in charge is ever single. Not in any church I've ever been to. Not a teacher. Nobody. Nobody in junior or senior leadership positions are ever single. That tells you a lot about how religion views your status of your marital status. And I have no plans to ever get married. I don't want to limit myself. I don't want to have responsibility. I just like living my life on my terms. And if it makes people uncomfortable, good. Now you know what it feels like having to have a conversation with these people. And if people don't understand that it's okay to be alone sometimes, happy without having a heterosexual fantasy, they have problems. And I am not going to be a stereotype. The most scary movie I've ever seen was The Stepford Wives. Because men see single, child-free women as a threat. And you don't have to look very far on YouTube. But I'm just happy to be single. I don't even view myself as single. I just view myself as a whole person. And I am not going to put my dreams on hold to make anyone else happy. Because at the end of the day, people who ask you to sacrifice your hopes, your dreams, your pursuits will probably leave you when they find a better option. Especially if you are involved with certain kinds of people. It's just not worth it. And seeing how much joy it's brought my family doesn't make me want to run out and join. It hasn't. It has not made people happy. I don't think I've ever met a happily married person in church. That's saying something. And yeah, the most miserable people I've ever met consistently are cis, heterosexual, married, religious women, specifically in Baptist churches or Catholics. And I've never met a kid who grew up Catholic and is still Catholic. I need to make a video about that. But yeah, be happy with who you are. The most important relationship of your life is with yourself. The most important choice you will ever make is, are you comfortable in your skin? And are you comfortable being who you are in your own skin around other people? People have a lot of regrets living in the closet, living a lie, living anything that they're not. But I don't think I've ever heard of someone who ever regretted living honestly. Not in the long run. And until we stop feeding young people lies about happiness is found at the altar. Personally, from what I've seen, the happiest people I've met in the last 10 years came out of a divorce lawyer's room. Marriage makes men happy. Divorce makes women bloom. I should put that on the wall. And that's just how it is. Marriage doesn't make women happy. Because 70% of the people who initiate divorce or initiate breakups are women. And our culture is uncomfortable with a happy, single, child-free woman. And if that doesn't get our attention, nothing will.